Hi guys, this is Puppy UK for EvECoPilot.net, and today I'm going to do the first of my requested videos today. This was a video requested by Killer Shark 73. It's going to be about drones. As you can see, we've got all our drones right here. So I'm in my carrier, which can hold a massive amount of drones, and we're basically going to go over some key points you need to know about drones, the different types of drones, different sizes of drones, and the different races for each different type. So first off, a few things you need to know. Every drone that you launch is going to take drone bandwidth. So if you right click on your ship and press show info, and the attributes here, you're going to have drone bandwidth. So this is a carrier, it's got a massive drone bandwidth. It has 375 bandwidth. If you take like a cruiser or a frigate, they're probably only going to have about 25. Now if you then look at the drones, so if we start with a small scout drone and we look, you can see that this drone takes 5 bandwidth per drone. So if I have a ship that has a 20 drone bandwidth, I'm only going to be able to launch 4 small drones. So a lot of the times the drones you can use are limited by the type of ship. So for example, if we look at the heavy scout drones, we can see they take 25 megabits per drone. So if I had a ship with 25 megabits, I could only launch 1 heavy drone. And the second thing is the drone bay, so how much size you have in your drone bay. So if I open my drone bay here, you can see I've got 80,000 meters squared for drones. Now again, most like normal subcap ships will only have maybe 50 or even 25, and again, just like we had the bandwidth, we can look and see the drones have a volume as well. So making sure that you have, looking at the volume you have in your drone bay and looking at the bandwidth you have in your ship is really going to tell the type of drones and the amount of drones that you can use. So most subcapital ships can only launch a maximum of 5 drones. There's a skills under drones. Let's just grab my skills here. Look at drones. Now my drone skills really aren't the best. They are quite lacking in a few areas. So really, there's some skills which are basically generic to all drones. So advanced drone interfacing, that's just going to allow you to use drone control modules, which again in turn enable you to launch another drone. Anything short of basically Thanatoses, which is the Galanti carrier, you're really not going to use these very often. Then you've got specializations for each race of drone. So getting I think Minmatar drone specialization is probably the first one you should be learning. Most of the Minmatar drones are considered the best drones. So again, you basically get drone damage per level for that. It also enables you to use Tech 2 drones. So if we have a look at these Tech 2s here, prerequisites, you see you can, the scout drones, all the light, mediums and heavies, all scout drones. The drone skill itself is basically allowing you to operate the drones. If you're using drones, really getting drones to 5 is going to enable you to launch 5 drones. That's a pretty good thing. Sharpshooting is damage, navigation is speed, interfacing I think is drone damage and mining yield, so that's a really good one. You should really 5 that straight away. Durability is just a little bit more health on the drones, and then you've got skills which are specific to the different types of drones. So Sentry drones if you want to use Sentry drones, repair drones for repair drones, heavy drones, fighters example, which is for the carriers. Carriers deploy the fighters. Yeah, electronic warfare drones as well. So these are specific to using a certain type of drone. Now, so obviously putting the skill points in the right places. Like you can see, my drone skills really aren't good. Getting the fighters up really is all I use the drones for. I'm in the process of training that up to 5, which gives me more damage and enables me to use fighters. But we're talking about capital ships here. The only thing you can use fighters in is capitals. So getting the right skills in the right place, is really obviously going to help the drone damage. Getting like a full rack of level 5 skills is you really notice those drones when they hit you. Whereas at lower levels, even where my skill points are at the moment, I've got 4 million there, and most of those are in fighters. Drone damage is somewhat mediocre. I really should put more. If I use drones, most of the stuff I do is either logistics or capital stuff these days. So again, putting the right skill points in, it's like everything else in EVE. The more skill points, let me just see what's going on here quickly. Just getting a shot out there. These two. Just keep an eye on these two here. Yeah, getting the right skill points in the right place is obviously really going to help you out. So now we know how to make sure we can use the drones we want to use. Let's give this guy a rep here. Shield drones out for him. Just pop those over onto him. Now we're now going to look at just an overview of the different types of drones. So obviously you've got your scout drones. Now again, your scout drones come in small, medium and light, and they're basically your damage drones. They're also pretty much your generic drones as well. If you're I've just put myself into combat weapons climber and no log off. Okay, that's fine by me. So now that other guy can aggress me if he wants to. Big whoop. Yeah, scout drones. They're basically your basic damage drones. 9 times out of 10 for a damage roll, they're pretty much what you're going to have. And really, you want to look at the size and the type of the drone is what's important. So what you want to make sure of is that the drones you're using are most, aside from the fact that you can fit them, is that the drones you're using are going to be as effective as they can be on the target you're planning to hit. Now what I mean by that is basically drones work in a very similar way to ships. So if I've got a frigate and I'm shooting away at a battleship, it's really not going to do much damage. And if I've got a battleship and I'm shooting away at a frigate, I'm just not going to hit it. And this concept works with drones as well. If I've got small scout drones out and I'm hitting a battleship, he's probably not going to notice. At the same time, if I've got heavy drones out or large drones out and I'm hitting a frigate, it's just going to miss. Drones, just like ships, have a tracking speed attributes. So again, there's a tracking speed of 0.47, so that's not going to be able to hit the smaller ship. So if you're fighting frigates, maybe cruisers, some fast cruisers, you want to be using the light drones. Battle cruisers, battle cruiser size ships, you're looking at mediums, maybe some of the bigger, slower cruisers, and battleships, you're looking at using the heavy drones. Now even then, that's not always true. It comes into, even just because you're in a battleship, for example, taking light drones in a battleship, like light sentry drones in a battleship, can be a good idea, because if you come across a cruiser or a frigate that you can't hit because you're in a battleship, you can set your drones on that ship. So for example, you get a little, some little ibis tackles you in a belt, he's going to be able to hold you there forever because your main guns aren't going to be able to hit him. Whereas if you've then got a rack of light drones coming out, they're going to kill him or at least force him to go away. So, and this sort of becomes very situational. So we'll come back to that in a little bit more detail later. But your scout drones, to the relative sizes for your targets, and obviously making sure you have the bandwidth and the drone space to hold them. Next up, we've got logistic drones. You saw me pull a few of them out earlier. I think that maybe took 10 or 15 seconds there to completely wreck that vagabond up to full health. Now I don't know what his fit was like, but as you can see, I think that was 8 or 9 of them out, wasn't it? How did that pop out then? 9. Yeah. So 9 heavy armor drones. Shield drones, and they do a significant amount of repair. And really, you want to be using these as a logistics. That they're not really enough on their own, so you wouldn't want to go out in a fleet really and rely on logistics drones. The idea is that They're there to supplement your logistics. So if you're out in an Oneros or you're out in a Guardian, obviously take some armor drones with you so that you can supplement that armor input. Or for example, if you've got someone that's just taking light damage, leave your light drones on them when you're finished repping. So if they do change target, you're just going to get that little bit of an extra buffer. And again with the shield drones, same concept. And again, they have light, medium and heavy variants. Basically the light ones are quicker, but they hit, they rep for less. Mediums are in the middle, and the heavy ones are slow, but they rep for a really reasonable amount. And again, this is situational. So rather than looking at your enemy now, you want to be looking at your friendlies. So you look at a heavy armor maintenance spot, you can do 2,400 ms. Now, most of the time, I use heavy drones on everything. The only thing that really causes me to use other than heavy drones is basically space. If you can afford and have the bandwidth in the drone bay to hold them. If not, obviously make sure you can get 5 of the drones out. You can do the number crunching if you want and look at the repair amount of maybe 5 lights over 2 heavies, example, and figure out what's best in your situation and what drones you should be using. Now from there you've got Sentry drones. Now Sentries are damage drones. They can do an awful lot of damage in the right situation. They're very long range. So you see the optimal range on these bouncers is 48k. So you can drop these 48k off a gate and you can shoot people as they come in. But they don't move, or they do, they just move very, very slowly. You're talking about, I think, where's their maximum speed here? They don't even have one, they don't even have a speed listed. No, but they do sort of drift around a little bit. If you sat dead still in space with all your sentries out, they will sort of drift away from you ever so slowly. But the downside to these is, again, their tracking is really bad. So let's have a look here. Tracking speed and accuracy 0.01, and that's really bad. So basically you need to have these things out at 40k away. And if you start coming in close to bouncers and sentry drones, they're really just going to miss every time. But their damage is really quite high. Now, the reason you use these is, for example, pos bashing. If you guys are doing a lot of pos bashing as a corporation, or even on your own, I guess, getting bouncers really does add a fair chunk of damage. They'll hit the pos for a good few hundred a whack. And it really can speed the thing up. You've got everyone in your fleet using sentries. It really does make a difference, and that's pretty much the only reason they're in my carrier, is that if I'm there bashing a pos doing logistics for the dreadnoughts, I'll just pop my sentries out and just have them shooting away at the pos. They can be used in sort of some advanced tactics when you sort of talk about like gate camping maybe, or springing some sort of a trap, where you're lighting a Sinosaurophy field or something along those lines, hoping that your enemy's going to come when you've already got your capitals in, and you can drop these bouncers out of 40 or 50k and then fly away from them 20 or 30k. So when they land on you, you're then going to have the bouncers sort of hitting at optimal range while you're webbing the targets down and setting that. You set them on the same way you do with any other drone. You tell them who to shoot. So you land, you web the target, you hold it in place, and then the sentry drones just beat down on it. But again, they're very situational. Using them at the wrong time, they're basically essentially useless. You're going to have to move around and you can't get back to them. You're just going to lose. Basically, you're going to lose. The drones are going to do no damage. You'd be better off with a set of sentry or scout drones. Sorry. But again, in the right situation, used properly, they really bash out a ton of damage. Let's see what these guys are up to. Okay, so we've got sentry drones, we covered scout drones, we covered logistic drones, ECM drones. I'm really not a fan of ECM drones. Are they actually killing this guy? They are. I don't think they're actually going to get him. If he drops into structure, then I'll probably send them out to him. He's just going to dot like a fag. Anyway, yes, ECM drones. They do have their place to a degree. Again, like all the other drones, small, mediums and heavies, the small drones are a lot quicker. Yeah, 4000 ms, but their jamming strength is going to be lower. So we look at the strength they've got here, basically 5 across the board. We look at the medium drones, 7.5 across the board, and then the heavy drones, 12 across the board. Now, on top of that, obviously, you know, again, we're looking at the speed here. So they can do, these heavy drones can do half the speed. The reason to use ECM drones really is their jamming strength compared to an ECM ship is very weak. But obviously there's 5 of them, and they will just keep trying to jam your target. So they can work in, I think, maybe small gang PvP or solo PvP. So if you're in a small gang and everyone, and you're outnumbered, for example, so say you're going in, you know, 10 versus 15, for example, if you had all 10 of your pilots put a rack of, you know, small ECM drones onto a ship, unless they're running jet like ECM boosters, you're probably going to keep him pretty much perma-jammed. So for example, you would then you'd focus these ECM drones on the hostile logistics, and what that would then do is essentially take those logistics out of the fight, obviously then enabling you to, with your logistics, to then win. Again, they're very temperamental, especially the small drones. So, you know, and again, you then take a sort of set of large drones. That was interesting. It decided to, what the hell? My frame rate just absolutely sunk. What's going on here? I don't quite know. Is there a fight kicking off, maybe? No, nothing serious. Anyway, God, wow, this is really getting low. Okay, so yes, the ECM drones. Keeping, like, you've got to ask yourself, is, you know, what you're basically doing with every rack of ECM drones is you're throwing away what could potentially be damage drones, or could potentially be logistics drones. So you've got to really, and also you've got to have the skill points for them. You know, getting all the drone levels up to 5. I believe that will actually, let's have a look here, electronic warfare drones, information. What does this do? 3 meter Kadari, okay. So that's going to give you a slightly longer control range, and that's another big issue there with the ECM drones, and even the, you know, any normal fighting drone is the control range that you have. Now, if you're fighting in close quarters, then obviously using, you know, and you're fighting the targets, you know, and you've got damage drones, you're going to be hitting the targets that are there with you. Whereas if you're then trying to use ECM drones on their logistics, chances are, or if their logistics is any good, they're going to be 70 kilometers away. And if your control range isn't that far, the drones are just going to fall out of control range. You're not going to get them. So, what are my little drones here doing? So, for example, we look at this ship here. This is a Loki. Now, for a Loki, I'm going to pull these drones back in. I'm going to pull out a set of medium drones here. Launch those out. Flow. There he is. See, I might have to rep this guy's. Where is he? There he is. I don't know. I think he's just trying to bait, so I'm not going to rep him. Oh, no, he walked off. Never mind. Anyway, okay, so he's repping this Loki now. I'm just seeing what's going on here. So this guy is getting rep, so he's a friendly. Anyway, yeah, so obviously at that point the drones are going to be no use. You can't set ECM drones on a target 70k away if you have a 45k drone control range, which getting more than that is we're going to start requiring modules on your ship. So again, that's very situational. If you know that your enemies are coming through the gate and you want to take out their, you know, you don't have dedicated jammers, you know, a Blackbird, a Scorpion, that's going to take care of the logistics for you, then yes, potentially ECM drones could be used, and they could be used to good effect. But at the same time, would you not rather take that damage from the Sentry, you know, from the Scout or the Sentry drones and use that to then kill the logistics quicker. So it's always a trade-off, but understanding the only reason I really use ECM drones is when I'm out in my carrier. If I'm in my carrier jumping through systems, or I get pinned by some little frigate or a little interceptor, they can hold me there and basically until their fleet comes and kills me. Whereas if I've got ECM drones, I can just align off to a certain celestial or a pause or wherever I want to align to a safe spot, and then wait for that one jam. So that the drones work and work and work. As soon as they get that jam off, I'm free to warp away. The warp disruptor drops and I go away and get out. So for that purpose, and that works for solo PvP as well. If you're running around looking for 1v1s, which people say is dead, but it's really not, it's good fun, then you can use ECM drones for that. So yeah, so we covered ECM, we covered Scout, Sentries, Logistics. Fighters are basically capital only ships, so my carrier, which is now stuck in the station, can deploy fighters. Let's get these guys in. Get these guys launched. Fighters are basically super drones, basically. Now, if we just have a look at the stats here. Now, they can only be launched by carriers or super carriers, which are basically capital ships, and they do a massive amount of damage. They have a massive control range, and in mass can really do an awful lot of damage. The only drones that are better than this, which I don't have, is the fighter bombers, which you can only launch from super capitals. You can launch them basically from the mothership, or the super, and they're basically anti-capital ships. They really do a lot of damage. Now, again, by the time you sort of get to, we're going to cover the fighters a lot more detail, which fighters to use, when to use them, in like the specific carrier video I'm going to do. So don't worry about them. But if you do see fighters, they've basically come from a carrier. Now, the other advantage to fighters is that if I'm in this system that I'm in now, I could fleet up with Florin or Cho here, for example, and I could assign these fighters. I can just select these fighters, and I can then assign these fighters to a player, and they will follow him around. Or more importantly, if I sent them to attack a player and he walked off, the fighters would follow him and they would go and warp away with him. So the advantage to that is that I can sit outside a pause or outside the station here with my carrier, and my fighters can go off and assist people on gates or in system or elsewhere. I don't need to be on the grid with the fighters, all the fighter bombers. They'll just go and do their thing, and they'll assist other players. So basically I can assign 5 drones to you in your Omen or your Zealot or whatever you're flying around in, and the fighters will then go and fly and work with you while I just sit here and do nothing. Can be very useful. Using that in the right situation could be really powerful. For example, setting up a gate camp. You've got 3 or 4 carriers, each with 15 drones deployable. You can do up to 10 with skills, another 5 through modules, and you can give 3 people 5 fighters on the gate. So it's a massive amount of damage. You get on all the kill mails, and you can basically just sit there. The carrier itself isn't any danger. Anyway, like I said, we'll go into that in a lot more detail. So really, that's pretty much all you need to know about drones. I'm trying to think of really other situations you use the ECMs in, but again, I'm not a big fan of them. I certainly don't. I'm not the be-all and end-all of drones. You need to speak to a Galanti pilot for that, really. But they're a massive part of it. You've got 10 pilots with 5 racks of the right drones for the right ships, and they're going to add a lot of damage to your fight. You could swing a fight with with a good set of drones quite happily. So getting the right skills in, understanding which drones to use when, is a big part of it, again, because it's so easy to render drones useless. Using heavy drones, and you then find yourself having to kill a support fleet. It's not going to be any good. So I hope that was useful. Any questions, dump them in the comments. I'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, went on a bit. Mouse it's hurting a little bit, but yeah, there you go, guys. There's drones. So have a good time. I'll see you next time.